Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This is Multifamily Chronicles, and I'm your host, Adrian Daniela. Today, we have right here in the studio with us, Roland Stewart. Welcome to the show, Roland.
Thank you. Thank you, Adrian. Glad to be here.
Roland, I want you to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about your journey, especially the part that you started with $288 and you made it to $30 million in wealth.
Well, we did. It was exciting. It was exhausting and full of bumps. Fun. So we started with $288. We started saving money because neither one of us wanted to be poor. My ex-wife had grown up on a farm in just outside Louisville, Kentucky, or between Louisville and Elizabethtown, and farming life wasn't easy. She had 8 siblings, so they weren't anything we'd call above the poverty line. I had grown up in a family that was upwardly mobile. I lived in apartment complexes most of my life as my father chased his dream. It was a Catholic military family, so it was a little bit on the strict side. I'm here in Denver celebrating my sister's 80th birthday, and we've had a lot of conversation about that time period. At any rate, when I got married, I had just graduated from artillery OCS outside of Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and had been assigned to Fort Knox, and Bonnie and I met there and got married. I did a net worth statement. Why in heaven's name I did a net worth statement, I have no idea. But it was $288. She brought the assets, I brought the debt. And we decided very quickly that I remember the first time she said, the crops might not come in, we better save money. So we did. It took us 19 years to save our first $1 million. Along the way, we had bought houses and apartment complexes, and obviously that helped in our savings, because if you make those things net cash flow, that adds to your savings pretty quickly. At the end of 19 years, we had paid off our first large apartment complex, large for us, 14 units. Then we went on, and then I retired at 50 because I didn't have to work anymore, didn't have to report to someone. And within 2 years, we had our second million. A friend of mine that I used to swim with at an apartment complex, while I was trying to recover from a lot of strain. I had been in the investment sector and the lending sector in San Francisco, California. I had literally fallen off the cliff. I could not walk and talk at the same time. It was a horrible time in my life, and I swam every day I could. And my swimming partner was back to college to get science credit so he could become a doctor, a dentist. That was his goal. At any rate, through the years, we kept in touch. We climbed a number of mountains together, Mount Hood, the South Sister, and so on in Oregon. And I think we hit 5 mountains, I'm pretty sure. It might have been 6, but I'm pretty sure it's 5. I think I climbed one twice or 3 times. At any rate, when I retired, I took him out to lunch, and we were talking, and he said, Gib, you have been in real estate for almost 20 years now. I need some help finding some space for my dental office. I said, okay, I'll help you. And we went out and started looking at property. And we started looking at first for a unit for him to rent. In those days, they didn't have dental smells under control yet, so most landlords wouldn't take them. So I had a difficult time finding him space. So at one point we decided we were going to try and build one. We interviewed 3 developers. We drove back to the office, and he stopped and he said, okay, I want you to develop this building. That was a little bit scary. We decided which of the 3 developers we liked, so we could use him as a backup if I was a failure. At any rate, we went through the process. We bought the land. I think my ex-wife and I probably 1031 into the vacant lot. I'm pretty sure that happened. We put up the building. Along the way, we had talked to a friend, and he had said the best way to start in real estate is to hit a home run with your first purchase. And luckily we did. So that was that. And then a couple of other dentists called me and asked me to build buildings. And I built buildings for them. And so I helped develop buildings for probably 18 years. And that's how we ended up with a net worth of 30 million. I had Friday, I had 5 limited liability company meetings on Friday, and we verified the net worth of each one of them, and most of them are paid off now. We have kept up the idea of savings. What a novel idea, right? And we found out that all but 2 of them are paid off, and the doctors and dentists who are co-owners are quite pleased. That's my story. And in the last few years, I've started to invest in the internet and other things like that. The most recent thing I did was I bought 12.5% of a multimedia company that I think is going to go to 40 billion. We're after DreamWorks, and I'm excited about it. That's where I am as of yesterday.
That's a fantastic journey. I do want to go back a little bit and towards your beginnings. And could you please elaborate a little more about how you get to your first million? You said that, you started saving, but, I'm assuming if you and your wife were both working full-time jobs, it takes a very long time to save, up to $1 million. I'm assuming that you did other things too, to get to the $1 million. Could you share?
Okay. So we started, our first investment was in the stock market. We had saved $10,000 and it was time to try something. So we invested in the stock market. We had a really good stockbroker. He went on about a year after we had started. He went on to manage Berkeley's retirement fund, which is obviously University of California, Berkeley has a phenomenal endowment fund, and he went on to manage that. And then we got assigned a new stockbroker. Well, within 6 months, he worked our $10,000 down to zero. No dollars, no pennies, no nothing. I'm sorry, we need to close your account. That was that. So we started saving again. Then in 1975, we bought our house. Those of you who are old enough to remember, that was very high inflation in those days. It was 14, 16, 12 years. So we made a lot of money really quickly on that house. And so in exactly 2 years later, in November of 77, I borrowed $18,000 from friends and family, which was a lot of money in those days, folks. That was a lot of money. And I just can't believe that I had 6 people that trusted me with $18,000. I mean, that's an incredible, in my opinion. And then we got a second mortgage on our house, and we started looking, and we looked at houses, and we looked at duplexes and triplexes and apartment complexes. And I took a gamble, and we invested in a small apartment complex, the 14 unit I already talked about. And so then 20 days later, I got a note saying, your first mortgage payment's due. And of course, we had wiped ourselves out. I mean, everything we had plus $18,000 I owed friends and family. So I took the city bus over to his office, and I sat down with the managing partner, and I said, I can't pay you. I mean, that's the bottom line. I can't pay you. And he said, well, if we just move that payment to the end of the mortgage, how's that feel? I said, no problem. So then we went back to work, and we did work. There was one day we were driving back across a bridge in downtown Portland, and my ex-wife started crying. And I said, why are you crying? She says, I'm just so happy I get to go back to work. So that was a tough weekend. At any rate, that's the beginning of our life. She was crying because she was able to go back to work. What a deal. So that's it, Adrian.
If you don't mind, after the 14 unit apartment complex, what was your next move?
My next move was to start paying that sucker down and doing everything I could. Then the next move that came along was probably 3 years later. A friend of mine who was a real estate agent was in business with a partner, and the partner's wife had contracted cancer, and he just wanted to liquidate. So I purchased his duplex. We purchased his duplex, which is a long ways away from the apartment complex and even further away from our house. But when you can buy something with instant equity of something like $5,000 when $1,000 was like $4,000 today. Okay, so at $20,000 of equity, that's pretty cool. And so I added that to my weekend maintenance. And then what was next after that? Oh, people started realizing I was a buyer. I got to know a lot of real estate agents in Salem, Oregon, because we had moved there because I got a job that I didn't think I would get in 7 years, or maybe even longer. I was offered this great job. In fact, it's the job I ended up with when we moved to Salem was at a salary range within the top 3% of Oregon government. And our firstborn was born at that time. And so I took the job. And we started buying almost anything that came available that made sense economically. If it could pay for itself, I'd buy it. And I would provide the work. That was just the way it is. And my ex-wife would raise the kids. And then the kids started going with me and picking up cigarette butts. It's just the way it is.
So you said it took you, was it 19 years to get to your first $1 million?
Yes, it took 19 years. Then it took 2 years to get to $2 million. And then it took 16 years to get to 30 million.
So between the million number one and million number two, to just double that in a couple of years, is that a
That's
power
because
of a large number? What was the secret there?
The secret there was the dentist asked me to build a building for him, and we hit a home run. I mean, we got instant equity out of that. I didn't charge a development fee. I didn't charge all kinds of fees a lot of people charge, right? I was just building it for the dentist and me. So we ended up with how many tenants? 1, four tenants. The building was 13,970 or 790 square feet, because we were halfway through construction. We ran into a major water line that nobody knew about, wasn't recorded. And so we had to cut off the edge of the building, and it made a perfect place for a sign. And so we put the sign on the diagonal and attracted all kinds of people that needed dental service. It was great. So be it. Take advantage of the opportunity.
You took a challenge and you flip it, and you turn it into an opportunity.
You bet. That's
what it's all about. It's about the mindset, right?
Yes, sir. Oh yeah. I am very much an optimist. For many years in my life, I wanted to commit suicide, right? That just didn't seem reasonable. I was a sad person. Growing up in a Catholic military family can be difficult, and it was. And but I went to college because I was everything I did, I was supposed to do. I had to get my college degree. I had to become an officer in the military. I had to get a reasonable job. I didn't get a real reasonable job, but I didn't report it to my folks. I got a job where I was hired half-time to be basically doing menial work. And I grew into it. And I got 7 promotions in 10 years. So if you're an optimist, things kind of seem to work out.
Could you elaborate what made you switch from that suicidal mindset to becoming an optimist?
I don't know.
Put that behind you.
Maybe my hormones slowed down or something. Okay. But swimming helped a lot. I was at university, I played basketball, and more importantly, I ran track, and running helps take care of a lot of negative thoughts.
Physical activity in general.
That's right.
I want to go over the book you wrote. You wrote a book, Learn, Apply, and Grow Rich. Tell us about the book. Tell us what motivates you to write the book, and then share your story in a book.
Well, as I didn't know anything going into real estate, so I had to learn. And then I kept applying what I learned. And every time I ran into a brick wall, I either dug underneath it or climbed over it or went around it. Didn't matter to me. I knew where I was going. And so that's the apply. And making $30 million makes me feel pretty good. I can do anything I want today. I actually spend most of my time working because I enjoy my work. I keep expanding. Starting last year in 22, I said by 42, I want to be worth $1 billion. The first stop was 10 years to be worth 100 million. I am well on my way to 100 million just 1 year later. The biggest flyer I've taken is the multimedia company, Wilder Way Media. And it has a website, wilderwaymedia.com. That's my biggest flyer, but I think that company is going to be worth a hell of a lot of money. So what made me write this book? What made me write this book, probably 15 years, my kids have known we were wealthy. And my kids have been hammering me, write a book, Dad, tell us how it happened. So I wrote the book. And then my middle kid is a security specialist for satellite security. And he made me change all the names and all the places. So the book actually took place in Portland, Oregon. The book is in Seattle, Washington, where I happened to grow up and I knew a little about to be able to change the location. The book actually took place in Portland, Oregon, and all the names are changed except for mine.
Could you elaborate a little bit? What was the reasoning behind changing the names of the places, names of the people? in a book?
Well, my ex-wife was a wealthy ex-wife, and my son sure doesn't want her hammered.
Okay, that explains.
Okay.
I want to ask you next, Roland, what key qualities and mindset do you believe are essential for achieving financial success?
Well, goals, optimism, figuring out answers. People come to me to figure out ways to solve unbelievable problems. And usually I come up with an answer for them. And sometimes two. So you gotta be problem solver. If it happens in the middle of the morning and Saturday morning at 1 a.m., what are you gonna do? And I had several of those. One day, this is a good one. Portland, Oregon had an for the first time ever that I know of. It was breaking a lot of water pipes. I had a basement storage area that also had a laundry in it, and the laundry pipe broke. It was, I think I got the call around 1 or 2 a.m. By 8 a.m., I was making phone calls. I probably made 100 phone calls between 8 a.m. and 10:30. Most of the plumbers were closed. My 100th call, or 110th, or whatever the hell it was, I ran into a plumber who lived 2 blocks from the apartment complex. He walked over, fixed the problem, drained the unit. It was 4 feet of water already, so he waded in, fixed the problem, it drained, and he sent me a reasonable bill. I couldn't believe it. I was ready for another zero on the bill. He paid me for his time, just like a regular plumber. What a phenomenal person. But he was my 110th or 11th phone call. So that's that. There have been several times in my life, when I had to make over 100 telephone calls to solve the problem.
I think I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm not sure why that might be.
I don't know. I'll get this closer. How's that?
Yeah. It's
okay.
It's way better now.
Okay, great.
Now. Could you share some specific strategies or principles outlined in a book that can help our listeners reach their financial goals?
Okay, probably in the first 5 pages of the book, there are 28 things you need to learn. You need basic math. I've never used anything over basic math. What's a triangle? What's a rectangle? Can you figure it out? So if you have basic math, that's a big one. Because the first thing you need to do is you need to pencil an apartment complex. In my book, I have a story about the apartment complex from hell. Oregon had really good high prices for real estate. When I ended up in the position, for some reason, remember why, I had to do a 1031 exchange. So I decided that we decided, all these decisions were we were in lockstep. We knew where we were going, and we did. And so we bought an apartment complex near my parents. They were getting pretty old, and I thought, geez, if I went down and looked at the apartment complex about once every 3 months, that would be a good idea. I penciled probably 20 properties in Southern California, and got to the point where I had 3 that I thought would be worth buying. Flew down, saw the 3 in one day, and flew home. Decided on the one to buy, penciled it as conservatively as you could ever think of penciling a property. This had to be a good buy. So I bought it. Well, it was not a good buy. The 4th property manager I had and I were walking back to his office one day, the fourth property manager. And he said, didn't you realize that this city is the, let's see, the record-keeping area of flakes? Well, it was near a Marine base. I thought that would be okay. But even when I called the company commander of one of the flakes that we had accidentally rented to, they told me, nope, rules have changed. When I was the company commander, they call me, I'd bring the young private in and say, you got to pay your bill up to date. You got to give your 30-day notice, and you got to move out, get back in the barracks. That was it, period. No questions asked. But they said, and I was only in the Army. I thought the Marine Corps was tough. I was absolutely appalled that the Marine Corps wouldn't back me up. But that's the way it goes. So what do? You give the kid 30 days notice, he moves. And it was the flight capital of the world. And so we were putting both of our incomes plus most of my rental income into that property because it was so horrible. So along comes a young man and he says, we would like to buy your apartment complex. And I said, well, I'm not so sure I should sell. So they made me an offer, and it was much more than I expected. And so I sold, right? Get out from underneath the heartache. I was going down every other week. This is not a good flight plan. At any rate, so I sold the property. The guy was very pleased to buy it. Now, if you look at a graph of the housing market in Southern California, he bought at the bottom of the housing market. I'm sure he did very well. And I'm glad for him. He was very, I was very relieved to get rid of that property. So that's my story.
How many properties have you founded and have you owned throughout your life? How many different companies, and what
I suspect.
Successful?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's the first part of the question. How many companies? And then the second one is, I'd like to know from you, what does it take to become a successful founder or business owner in general?
Okay. So I've probably had close to 40 residential properties. Okay. So I've had probably 40. I can't tell you how many I have now, but it's not very many because we're 76 and 74 years old. So, and we want to keep the big stuff, what we call the commercial group. We want to keep that in really good shape. Most of our properties are free and clear now. We have 2 that have mortgages. So you got to think about that. So that's the residential end of things and the commercial end of things. And then I made a list of 17 businesses that I'm now in and a founder of. So the answer to the question, I think, is 17. I'm always told that it takes me a long time to get around to answers, but I had to think that one through as we went. And the way I have them now on the spreadsheet that I've been putting together for the last 2 weeks is I have the property name, and then I have the manager's name, and then I have the manager's phone number, and then I have the manager's email address, so that everyone can tell who they can call in case of an emergency if I'm not available.
Roland, how do you prepare yourself to recognize and seize opportunities when they come your way?
Well, most of all, it depends on the person I'm talking to. Okay, so this is a story for everyone to hear. I had some commercial properties, and they They were probably about 16 years old, 17 years old. And I had a young man that had been following me every quarter, every 3 months. He would call me and ask me if he could service my heating and cooling equipment. He did that for 5 years, every quarter. And then one day I was walking with the person who had been managing the HVAC systems for 16 years. And he says, I need to tell you, I'm retiring next year. So the next time the kid called me, I said, let's meet. So he came over to my side of town and we went to a small coffee shop. We sat there and we talked about it. I gave him every piece of information I knew and told him who the property manager was, who's part of our company. And so he called her. But while we were sitting there, I said to him, I said, well, what are you going to do with your life? Because he seemed like a really nice kid and obviously persistent, right? 5 years of calling me every 3 months. So he said, I've been the top salesman in the city for 3 years in a row. He says, I'm doing okay. I said, well, that's great. I said, what's your goal? Well, where are you going? He said, well, actually, I'd like to own an HVAC company eventually so that I got something to pass on to my kids. I said, oh, really? I said, so why in heaven's name aren't you doing that? You're making all this great money and what's happening to it? He says, well, nobody has money. We don't have money. None of our friends or neighbors have money. I said, okay, you have $100,000. Let's go buy one. So we went out and the first one was way too big. The second and third one were way too small. The fourth one we looked at was, in our opinion, just about right. Was doing $400,000 a year in business and had 2 techs and whatever. And so we bought that one. And then over the next few years, so we're in our 6th year, and he did $3.5 million last year. So, you pick the people. The reason I got involved in the television and movie industry was because somebody told me my book, I had 3 people tell me really quickly, right off the bat, that my book should be a movie. So I went to Upwork and put in script writers. I had 27 people reply wanting to write the script for the movie. They were all in my price range. So I identified that 3 of them had actually produced movies. So I started with them. I mean, why not try and get some talent, right? The proven. And the guy in South Africa, and I didn't see it eye to eye at all. He had big plans, and that's not my way to do things. And then I talked to the guy in London, and he and I hit it off very, very well. We're still in conversation. This is many months later. And then I talked to the third one, and that was Matt, who is the founder of Wilder Way Media. And I sat there, I said, what are you doing, Matt? And he said, well, this NFL quarterback, halfback, and he named the guy's name, and I recognized it. I don't watch sports much, but I do pick up stuff along the way. Yeah, you can't. One thing I never did was watch much sports. Okay, I was a college athlete. That was enough for me. None of my kids were overly interested in sports. My firstborn, she was a district champion in softball, but my middle kid, a boy, wasn't interested in sports at all, and my youngest wasn't either. So why, right? Why waste that time? So I didn't watch very little sports, but it allowed me to do more maintenance. So that worked out. At any rate, after talking with Matt for maybe 20 minutes and realizing that NFL halfback would never show up, I said, okay, I will make you an offer for 12.5%. Well, Matt didn't know whether he wanted to sell the 12.5% to me, but he did. because I was the only guy around, and I got a good price, and I'm really happy about it. And so then he said, well, you know how to do this. Why don't you figure out how to sell the other 45%? So that's my daily activity now. Staying on the phone trying to sell 45% of a movie and TV studio.
Thank you for sharing this. This is an amazing story. Next, I wanted to ask you, what are some common misconceptions about wealth creation that you address in your book?
The misconception is it's easy. I'm sorry, Adrian. It's just not easy, man. I've overcome more obstacles than most people see in their entire life. Any one of them is probably big enough for most people's life. So that's the biggest misconception. So you got to decide. Okay, so here's the only quote that I quote of my father's. You have to decide to decide. And once you decide, you know where you're going in life. And it's pretty hard to change that direction. I was very fortunate that I married the woman I married. She taught me the difference between saving and spending. And we had a wonderful life. We walked together almost every night for 40 years. And obviously at the end, when I retired, I became too much to handle. I understand that. She seems very happy. We meet, probably 20, 30 times a year because we have annual meetings for different buildings or different companies. She's not involved in anything I've done since she asked me to leave. But I've probably accumulated 10 more businesses. So, I'm having fun. She's having fun. What more could you ask for?
So you talked about obstacles and setbacks on your, path to success.
You bet.
How can give us some practical advice? How can individuals overcome those obstacles and setbacks on their way to financial success and prosperity?
Friends help a lot, no doubt about it. One of my college fraternity brothers became an electrician. If I have an electrical problem or a mechanical problem of almost any kind, he taught me how to change my oil on my car. I did that until I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. And when I had electrical problems, that worked. I would go out with him on his jobs and pull wire for him. That I did that for free, so he made money. And then when I had an electrical problem, I knew who to call. Financially, those are tough. You got to stay clean. I just talked to the ombudsman for the Securities and Exchange Commission on Friday. I had written him an email. I thought it was a her, but it was him. Had written an email saying, my biggest fear is the IRS. I'm as clean as I can possibly be. My ex-wife keeps the books on all the real estate. And the CPA we have a pretty conservative CPA. I didn't want one that was too aggressive. One of my friends was an extremely aggressive CPA, and I wouldn't let him touch our books. I had another friend who was very, very, very conservative. And I don't want him touching my books either. I mean, that's crazy to be giving away money. And so I was one of our partners when we were developing office buildings was an architect, a very good architect. I ran into him in Washington, D.C. on the subway the other day. Having a good accountant is a great idea. I did taxes for a lot of years for the family, and I hated every minute of it. So as soon as we got big enough that we needed somebody that was really competent. The architect suggested we try his, and we've been with her for almost 20 years now, probably. So having good sources and knowing how to get on the phone. I have probably, at least in 5 instances, maybe more, made over 100 phone calls to solve a problem. So you gotta be a problem solver.
I want to ask you about luck next. What role does luck play in achieving financial prosperity?
Okay, so when I was young, probably in my 20s, I was not a very good reader. Fact is, I still have a little dyslexia. So be it. Luckily, the university allowed me to graduate, which helped a lot. Having that degree helped me many times. And everything my parents and my sports scholarships paid for it was worth it. I would highly suggest it because it gives you a basis. What's the question I'm answering, Adrian?
Luck. Tell me about luck.
Luck. Okay.
Yeah,
so early
role of
on,
luck
I read a book
in
called The
becoming
Luck
successful.
Factor. The Luck. You want to read the book, The Luck Factor. In fact, I'm thinking of redoing it because it's old and it's out of publish. So we need to get that book out there again. And it was a person that was teaching people how to be lucky. And luckily, I was probably doing 6 of them already. And I developed 6 more because of him. And so my luck factor is pretty high. I have been extremely lucky. So to get to 30 million, you got to be extremely lucky, I guess, or be talented. It'd be nice to be talented. I'm not, but the fact is, I'm not talented at all. So a lot of things, a lot of times you just run into problems and you're standing in the grocery store line and the person behind you knows the answer. I mean, is that luck? Yes, sir.
Next, I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for someone that is just starting their journey with limited financial resources and they want to become wealthy? They want to build a successful life from a financial perspective. What are some pieces of advice that you would share with them?
Start small, get on good financial status, and then multiply. I mean, sorry, that's the short answer. Get yourself on some solid footing. I have many people in the small city of Salem, Oregon, where I no longer live, but many of those people that are involved in real estate have gone bankrupt more than once. That's not a good place to be.
What are some potential pitfalls or mistakes that people should avoid when pursuing wealth creation?
Okay, so I over leveraged to get into my first property. That's true, but I didn't do that much. I just kept trying, and I kept everything as solid as I could in case there were bad times. And there were plenty of bad times. The 1980, sorry folks, that's a long time ago. The 1980 recession could have killed me. But I started standing on the street corner with balloons on weekends, inviting people in to look at empty units. And people would stop to look at the balloons and talk with me. And pretty soon they were renting a unit from me. And you got to live through the slim times.
Roland, what is the most important takeaway or message you hope readers will gain from reading your book?
Persistence, persistence, persistence. That's it in a nutshell. Just you got to do something. So you have to decide that you really do want to do the work to be wealthy. That's the first decision. And then you start and you figure out which way is the best for you. Real estate might not be the answer, right? There are other answers. I don't know them, but I know what real estate did for me. And then be persistent.
Now, we talked about your book at length. What are your favorite books that are not written by you? Just what are some favorite books of yours that you have read?
Well, everybody that wants to make money or be famous or get ahead in politics or get ahead in any industry whatsoever needs to read, what is it? Learn and Grow Rich, I think. I think that's the first one most people should read. And I wish I could answer the rest of the question. I will tell you, I read business books as well as I can. If you haven't read Shoe Dog is by Phil Knight. He's a billionaire out of Oregon, has Nike shoes. His journey and my journey, he's got 2 more zeros than I do. That's the answer right there.
100
So there's 2. I'm sorry. I've picked up so many helpful hints, helpful ideas out of business books. It's hard for me to measure them. And I'm sorry, I don't have the memory for titles or much more than that. But there's 2, Think and Grow Rich and Shoe Dog.
Next question. How did a failure or apparent failure set you up for future success?
Oh, yeah, I've had plenty of failure, let me tell you. I tried to produce an audiobook probably 20 years before audiobooks were good. And that was a lot of money poorly spent. It caused a lot of disharmony in the family. But by golly, I wanted to be rich. Because I didn't want to worry about next month. I can go a lot of months with not worrying about anything. So I tried a bunch of different things. I was a failure. At one point in my life, I think I told you I couldn't walk and talk at the same time. So I decided that we were going to sell Tupperware. Well, that's a failure. I became a Fuller Brushman. Nobody even knows what a Fuller Brushman is today because they were going out of business and I got on the train, right? So there's another failure. I can tell you, it'd be hard for me to list all the failures, Adrian. Just would be hard.
But what's the main lesson that you learned from those failures? You know,
well, it teaches you not to go into the same industry.
Successes?
It tells you not to go into the same industry twice, right? That's a good portion. And then it teaches you just what it takes. You know, you look at somebody, okay, and they're doing something, and you try and get on the bandwagon and see if you can trail them, right? And sometimes it's just not what you can do. So you got to figure out what you can do. Now, I can do simple math. I can talk with people. I can engage them. I can lease. It's now leases because it's commercial. I can lease property better than anyone.
Next question. What advice do you have for a college graduate or a high school graduate getting ready to enter the real life? The real world, I should say.
Lots of surprises, let me tell you. At any rate, yeah, just take it one of my mottos is one step at a time. The other one is continue forward. Okay, people hear those from me all the time. Continueforward.com is my primary email address. You just have to work through things. I mean, life can be really tough at sometimes, and you can feel miserable, but you're going to come out the other side. I cannot understand the suicide rate. It's ridiculous. You will come out the other side. You just have to know that you're going to be able to get through whatever you're going through, because sometimes they're just too tough to bear. Most of the time, the best thing I found whenever I really started thinking about that kind of crap is I went to bed. I went to sleep, and usually 12 hours later when I woke up, I felt a lot better. I'd go for a swim, and then I felt like I was on top of the world.
In the last 3 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Oh, I eat the breakfast of champions. Okay, this is chapter in my next book, folks. Here you go. I have eaten oatmeal for 1,000 years. That's what I have for breakfast. And I have to tell you, I have Cheerios, cornflakes, grape nuts is my second favorite, and a couple of other things on the shelf. So after eating oatmeal for anywhere from 20 to 60 days in a row, I go over and I grab something. I became a vegan probably 20 years ago, and I stopped having mosquitoes chase me. So that was a good plus. I was diagnosed with cancer, lung cancer 4 years ago. Luckily, I live in an area where the hospitals check you when you have lung cancer. 30% of the people are not properly checked when they get lung cancer. Okay, 30% of the people in the United States who get lung cancer are not checked. They found that I had a unique type of lung cancer. A couple days before I had to go into chemo and the other stuff. And so I've been on a pill. I had 6 months to live. I just passed my fourth year. Fifth year is the gold standard. If you make it to the fifth year, they think you'll make it a long time. I hope that's true. I don't know why I got off on that strain of things, but in the last 3 years, I've just learned a whole lot about the internet. I have 3 different arms attacking 3 different portions of the internet. And actually, I guess I have 5. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so I have 5 companies that are working on different parts of the internet, and I'm pretty excited about that. I got some brilliant people working for me. I mean, people that I sit down in the room and I basically don't understand what they're talking about for about 10 minutes, and then I ask my simple question and they explain it the way I can understand it. So it's kind of neat dealing with people that are so much more talented than you. So hire smart people. Smart people. I got great people managing almost everything I have. So that's the last 3 years.
When do you?
When
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In 2022, so 2022, I decided that I wanted to be a billionaire, and so I was down to about 17 million by then because I'd split with my ex-wife, and we decided we didn't want to pay the attorneys. Neither one of us did. So we sat down and decided we're going to split it 50-50. And so she got 15 million, I got 15 million. That was a great deal because we could have eaten up a good 5 million in attorney fees. So the heck with that. So that was money saving. So by then I'd grown to about 17 or 18 million. And I decided, the heck with this. I kind of like that idea of having a B. So I said, in 10 years, I want to be worth 100 million. And then 10 years later, I hope to be at $1 billion. And I don't hope to be, I'm driving that way. And if I last long enough, we'll see if I get there or not. All right. So I started buying a business a year. And then at the beginning of this year, I ended up forming four because I had the right people. They're all smart and I got the money to pay them. So why not buy them and bring them into partnerships? Most of my businesses are group owned. Yeah. So you got to have some backup. I was developing a couple of buildings once, and I was running out of money. I was literally running out of money. My partner, the guy I used to swim with, his wife is pretty well to do, and I was just telling this story on Friday. So it came down to that we needed $250,000 within 3 months. And then we needed another 250,000. And she became alive and she sent $250,000 two times in a row and saved the building medical dental buildings. I don't know if that's luck or what it is, but it's sharing. And they thank me once or twice a year for giving them a good retirement. That's the value of forming relationships, I think.
Roland, when you lose focus or when you feel overwhelmed, how do you get back on track?
I go to sleep. The first thing I do, I just pull the plug. I have a great ability to go to sleep, and I'm sure that's developed during the time I was in depression, right? You can't push yourself over the edge. I mean, I did once, so I'm a poor person to talk about. It impacted my life for probably 25 years or so. And you got to ignore that as much as you can. But going to sleep helps a lot. Just sorry, folks. I'll talk to you in 8 hours.
Roland, great conversation, sir. Thank you for making the time to be here on a podcast to share your life story and lots of wisdom. In closing, I wanted to ask you, do you wish you would have said something you didn't have the opportunity to say during our conversation, or do you wish I would have asked a question and I didn't get the opportunity to ask, and what the answer to that question would be?
I wish I could think of something, Adrian. You've done a terrific job.
Thank you. Thank you again for coming. Now, for those out there watching this episode, if they want to get in touch with you, they want to reach out to you, how could they get in touch with you, Roland?
Well, the two easiest ways. Well, if you have my book, you have all kinds of ways to get a hold of me, right? But probably the best email address is continue forward, just like you spell it, continue forward at live.com. That's a real easy way to get hold of me. It's one of my primary email addresses. I have four. I have friends and family. I have primary business. I have secondary business, and I have junk. So that's what my middle kid taught me. And that's real useful. But continue forward. You won't get lost.
Roland, in closing, thank you so much for coming, for being a part of the show here. Great conversation. I wish you the very best. I hope to get you back here as soon as you hit that B.
Okay.
Where the stars would be, and to share how you got in there, right? We know how you got to 30 million. I want you to share the second part of the story. I wish you the very best. And again, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure to have you all here.
Thank you, Adrian. Appreciate the time.
Hey, everybody. Thank you. This is Multifamily Chronicles, and I'm your host, Adrian Danila. thank you very much for watching us today. I hope you have a great day. And we hope to see you